So, folks, we all had a big question that, at least up until now, wasn't fully answered. We were all wondering, myself included, how people were going to respond to the latest schemes by Old Donnie. In particular, how he was using threats and intimidation and other dirty tricks to try and put pressure on Jack Smith and his family, including his mother, in a pretty awful way. How are people going to respond? And there was a fear from some folks that maybe Donald Trump was going to be able to intimidate people into weakness or timidity or silence, but the exact opposite has happened, because Jack Smith, in a direct way, has responded to Donald Trump over his attacks on his mother and sister and all of that. And my goodness, the response is terrible for Trump, because it's also connected to broader legal maneuvers, guys, ones that are devastating to Trump. If you thought what we talked about yesterday was bad when we talked about the ruling in the Oath Keepers case, this got so much worse, and it's because of the tenacious hard work of Jack Smith in particular, talking about a Wednesday night explosion all on Donald Trump's head. Listen to this to start.
Barbara McQuade, let me show you what Congressman Adam Schiff had to say about the charges that the jury found Rhodes and others guilty of.
It shows the department's not afraid to bring some of the most serious charges. And now they've got to look at, okay, who was involved in organizing, inciting, inspiring, giving aid and comfort to those involved in seditious conspiracy. So I think it has consequences going up the ladder of responsibility. But I also think that the former president has got to be very concerned about other statutes that apply to these offenses, like obstructing the lawful functions of the Congress, which these defendants were also convicted of.
Barbara, let me show you one more member of the Select Committee raising those questions about Donald Trump and specifically about whether Meadows' testimony made that clear.
Mr. Meadows' testimony will bear on another key question before this committee. Did Donald Trump, through action or inaction, corruptly seek to obstruct or impede Congress's official proceedings to count electoral votes?
Liz Cheney asked that question much earlier in this calendar year. Are we any further to understanding the answer to her question?
I think we are, only in that this verdict really strengthens the hand of the Justice Department to explore cooperation with some of the other people who are charged with seditious conspiracy and now face trial. Additional members of the Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, and even these defendants who were convicted yesterday. All of them now face a much higher likelihood of going to prison for a very long time. And I think that makes the calculus change for them. If I am the defense attorney for any of these defendants, I am going to them today and saying, look, we now know how juries view these cases. You ought to really consider whether you want to plead guilty and cooperate. What do you have that we can give to the Justice Department that might be of value to them? And so I think that some of those doors that were slammed shut before might be budging open, and it may give an opportunity for the Justice Department to explore cooperation. And the reason that's important is that somebody has got to provide that information that links the people who were involved in the physical attack with Trump and his allies, the people at the Willard Hotel War Room. Was there a connection? Maybe there's not. But if there is a connection, then somebody in this group likely knows about that. And so I think this gives the Justice Department the upper hand for pursuing that cooperation that could connect those two groups of people. The people who physically attacked the Capitol and Trump and his allies.
You know, Pete, we learned through the January 6th Select Committee's public hearings that toward the end of their series of summer hearings, they had amassed a whole lot of witness testimony about Trump's knowledge of violence and the specificity with which he knew who they threatened and who they didn't threaten. He said, they're not going to hurt me. The specificity with which he was briefed on the weapons they had and the radio traffic that
So what that notes there, and I love Barb McQuaid, I feel like she's very good at distilling and just giving it to you straight in a very understandable manner. And what she's saying is this is terrible for Trump, but so many other people. If these folks had anything to do with the Trump inner circle or people right on the edge of the inner circle who have at least a secondhand connection to Trump, if they have anything to do with it, now they have great motivation to flip. You often think of people flipping before a trial, people flipping before they get convicted to avoid getting convicted at all in some cases. But it also has value afterwards, because if you're convicted, but you help and you cooperate deeply in some sort of investigation, then you can still save yourself many, many years or months in jail. Maybe you could avoid in jail entirely. Maybe you can get yourself some kind of better condition. Protect yourself from the full wrath of the justice, frankly, that you deserve. And she says it in two ways here. What Jack Smith can do, because he's a tough SOB, is put the screws to every one of these guys found guilty and say to them, you're facing X amount of months, X amount of years, X amount of fines. We could ruin you, and rightfully so, or you could help us. Tell us everything you know about Donald Trump. Tell us everything you know about J6. Tell us everything you know about all the people that were planning, not necessarily the physical thuggery, but planning the constitutional schemes. You might have had meetings with some of those people. Did some of those people mention Donald Trump? Did some of those people mention other senior officials in the White House? And even if you're not, as noted there, even if you're not just talking about these people, the people that were actually convicted, anybody that's facing a potential seditious conspiracy charge, whether it's Donald Trump all the way down, now they're much more afraid of the charge, one, being applied, and two, actually sticking after a trial in front of 12 men and women of the jury. And that's going to give greater motivation for those people to flip or even voluntarily come in and dish before they get charged in the first place. So this really kind of distills it further, that this has given them so much more strength to take down Donald Trump.
I think is very significant in terms of what happens next. I think it sends a signal to law enforcement and the Justice Department specifically that it is possible to convict the leaders of the January 6th attack on one of the most serious charges in the United States Code, namely seditious conspiracy against the United States.
Andrew McCabe, what's your sense do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I totally agree. To some degree, the referral will be theatrical more than anything else, right? The DOJ is not required to follow up on any referral that might be given to them. It's an opportunity, though, for the committee to kind of put an exclamation point at the end of this process, declaring exactly how they feel, specifically that they think people engaged in criminal conduct. However, if they turn over a referral to DOJ, I think it's going to make it that much harder for them to resist giving the evidence and the transcripts as well. You can't say, I want you to investigate and prosecute these people, but I'm not going to share the evidence I have with you.
You can't see why we think that.
Exactly.
Right. So let me ask you about what we saw in the Oath Keepers trial. Do you think the events of the last 24 hours have changed the calculation for the Justice Department in terms of whether or not to prosecute the former president, since they were able to secure this conviction?
Yeah, no question, in a couple of ways. The comments about the Oath Keeper verdict by the AG is a little bit more than just a chest-pounding session. He is sending a message to the attorneys who are currently representing the other Oath Keepers whose trial is coming up, and the Proud Boys, and whoever else might be in the wings later, that we can do this. We can put on these complicated, high-stakes political cases and get verdicts against you. So rethink whether or not you want to cooperate with us now, provide evidence, and seek an easier path. I think that's
very interesting.
And it's a very loud message to those folks who were in leadership positions who may be being looked at for their role in organizing and instigating the attack. And first among those is, of course, the former president.
So it says like Garland and Smith, they have a much stronger hand now. If anybody thought that the last few days where Trump was threatening family members and threatening Smith and threatening Garland and all of that was going to weaken them, one, Smith is he's a tough SOB. And I say that as endearingly. I say that as a positive, right? He's a tough guy. But more than that, he's tough because he's got the facts on his side. And with every one of these things, it strengthens the hand. Again, as noted in the previous clip, if you get convictions based on a type of charge, and it's never really been done before, because this is all very unique. There's never been something quite like J6 in American history, at least modern American history. And so when you get that first conviction, and you can do it, that makes it so much more likely to get it further, that the charges won't be thrown out by a judge, the judge will take them seriously, a jury will have a better chance of understanding it, and, the system in general, prosecutors that actually handle the nuts and bolts cases, Jack Smith can't run every case, they'll bring them forward. And again, if you're going to go after somebody who worked directly with Trump and say, we're going to charge you with seditious conspiracy, 3 weeks ago, they might have said, fine, whatever, it's never been done before. I don't believe your idle threat. Now, that threat is very, very, very real. And here's where they sort of outline that there is now substantial evidence directly at Donald Trump as well.
District of Columbia in a parallel civil case against the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys that is related to the events of January 6th. Thank you both for joining us. Norm, I do want to start with you. You have the Attorney General Merrick Garland here touting the seditious conspiracy verdict, vowing to hold others accountable in this press conference that Evan attended. How much do you think these convictions embolden the Justice Department? What is Garland telegraphing here about upcoming trials?
Alex, I think they embolden the Justice Department a lot. I've known Merrick Garland for over 30 years, since we were both young lawyers starting out in D.C. This is an unusual victory lap for him. If you have any question about the relationship of the Oath Keepers case to Donald Trump's potential liability, including on some of these same possible crimes, seditious conspiracy, obstruction of Congress, the Attorney General, eliminated that by talking about the special counsel in the press conference. I think Donald Trump is feeling very uneasy.
How worried should he be given the comments that we heard from Garland today?
It's not the comments alone that should worry him. It's that there is substantial evidence that, like the Oath Keepers defendant who didn't enter the Capitol, that he was a significant part of events that may confer criminal liability. He should be worried about the facts, the evidence, and the law, but also the resolve that Garland, on behalf of DOJ, is signaling.
We can't ignore this part in particular, guys. There is substantial evidence against Trump. This is substantial against him, and it's connected to these broader schemes. This is the response, guys. The response has been direct. This is it's hours after Trump made threats against Smith and his family. A Wednesday night bomb in response to his late night Truth Social threats from him and his sons and Marjorie Taylor Greene, whether they want to call them threats or they're just digging up information and, highlighting private citizens' names to their millions of thug followers and all of that. But the point is, the response is clear. You're going to threaten us. You're going to try to drag my name, my wife's name, my sister's name, my mother-in-law's name through the mud? And you're going to try to threaten them and scare them and do the same to me? Well, we're going to go at you because we got the facts on our side. We've already gotten some of your top cronies down, and getting those top cronies strengthens our hand against everyone in general, giving us way more flipping and evidence gathering opportunities. But critically, it gives us massive evidence and ability to take you down in particular. And so what they're saying is they've sent a notice directly to Donald Trump. The notice has been sent. He is in trouble. He is on borrowed time, and all the threats in the gosh darn world aren't going to change a thing. This is a fantastic response. And Trump, he is, for the first time probably in his stupid life, unable to say anything.